Of Almanac Extra, Monday, March 28th at 8 p.m., right here on Channel 2.
This is KTCA TV, St. Paul, Minneapolis, Channel 2.
Aloha, welcome to Kathy's Kitchen. I'm Kathy, and this is one of my sons, Manhava. Today in the kitchen we're going to show you how to incorporate some whole grains into your diet, aside from the more commonly used whole wheat flour and brown rice. Manhava's got a ball of bread dough started already, and this is to make our favorite bread, right? The nutty crust one?
Yeah.
Now this has a little bit of rye flour in it. He's got it mixed together, and let's see. This dough consists of half a cup of warm water, 2 tablespoons baking yeast, 2 tablespoons olive oil, 1 tablespoon honey, 1/4 teaspoon of salt, half a cup of white wine, 2 1/4 cups of whole wheat flour, half a cup of rye flour, and half a teaspoon of baking powder. And that just needs to be mixed together and kneaded, let's see, until it's nice and elastic. That usually takes about 5 minutes. It's still a tiny bit wet and stick to the finger. See? Go ahead and knead it for a few more minutes, okay? Let me know when you think it's done. And I'll show you how to make a grain confetti salad. Of course, you can use any whole grain, but today I'm going to use millet. This millet has been cooked just like you would cook rice or brown rice. This is 1 cup of millet that was originally boiled in 3 1/4 cups of water. And then once it comes to a boil, the water gets turned down and it simmers for about 20 minutes. Now millet is a tiny grain. As you can see it, most of you have probably seen this if you have birds in bird mix. But birds aren't the only ones that can benefit from eating millet. Millet is a really nutritious grain, and it's actually the only grain that's alkaline. It's often referred to as the queen of grains. Now I've cooled this millet off so I can start a salad. And first of all, I'll just kind of toss some vegetables in. I've got a cup of celery, a cup of diced red bell pepper. I prefer using the red because of the contrast in color, and half a cup of green bell pepper. And I forgot that I have some peas and corn, fresh corn, in the freezer. I often use frozen vegetables, either in salads like this or for cooking, because they actually contain more nutrients sometimes than the so-called fresh produce that you can get on a grocery store shelf. And that's because the vegetables are frozen almost immediately after they're picked. So less of the vitamin C is lost that way. This is 1 1/2 cups of peas and one cup of corn kernels. It's especially good to use frozen vegetables like that if your grain is just a tiny bit warm still, because the warmth from the grain will be cooled off immediately by the frozen vegetables, and the frozen vegetables will get thawed out by the warmth from the grain. Now to this, I'm adding about a quarter cup of very finely chopped fresh parsley and about half of a cup of slivered water chestnuts. And then I'm going to toss a dressing into this. And this dressing is made of 2 tablespoons olive oil, 2 tablespoons safflower oil, 3 tablespoons balsamic or wine vinegar, a quarter cup of plain low-fat yogurt, 2 tablespoons of nutritional yeast, 1 tablespoon of soy sauce, 1 tablespoon Dijon mustard, 1 teaspoon asafoetida or half a cup of slivered scallions, and 3/4 a teaspoon of black pepper. Just whisk those ingredients together till it forms kind of a creamy looking dressing. And then this gets poured on top of the grain and tossed in. And as you'll see in a minute, this makes a beautiful, colorful salad. And it's really best to refrigerate this at least an hour or 2 before serving time so that the flavor from the dressing can really get into the grain and the vegetables. Now, I started shopping in natural food stores quite a number of years ago, I guess almost 18 now. And at that time, most natural, or they were at that time mostly called health food stores, were primarily pill shops. But now, natural food stores have really begun to carry a lot more food, and most of them actually feature food. It's actually possible to get most of your nutrients from fresh foods and whole foods and not have to take a lot of pills to get your nutrients. Especially if you use whole grains, you're going to get a lot of B vitamins, vitamin E, and also a lot of protein. I do from time to time take vitamins, especially if I'm in a place that's quite smoggy like Los Angeles, because smog will deplete vitamins from the body. Either that, or if I'm in a more stressful situation, because stress causes the body to use certain nutrients up quicker. Now, isn't that beautiful? We have a real beautifully colored confetti salad that's fun to serve to family and friends. Let me see how Madhava's doing here. How's that bread dough going?
Okay.
Good? Let me feel it. Yep, that's perfect. It feels like an earlobe. That's how you tell the perfect bread dough. Okay, now we have to cut that in half, okay? And the rest of it is real easy, but this is what makes it special. If it was served as it is, it would pretty much taste like a regular whole grain bread. But to add some special flavor to this, we're going to each rub some olive oil, here you go, here, onto the balls of dough. And then we're going to sprinkle them with a spice mix. In this bowl, I've got a teaspoon of spike, which is a vegetable seasoned salt, and half a teaspoon of black pepper and a 1/4 teaspoon of asafoetida. And what I like to do is make sure the oil is rubbed on the surface of the bread. And then I'm going to use half of this, and you get the other half, okay? And then just rub the spices and herbs on one side of the bread and the other side as well. Then this bread dough needs to be flattened out to about 1/2 inch thick and rolled in 1½ cups of chopped pine nuts. And I usually roll them with a rolling pin, although you can press them with your hand. Rolling in the rolling pin seems to embed the pine nuts into the bread a lot better. There. And then it's your turn in the pine nuts. And oh, here's the cookie sheet. This goes on an oiled cookie sheet and needs to be covered with saran or plastic wrap for rising. Come and let me show you how I've got the bread rising. I like to rise my bread in an oven, especially if you have a gas oven with a pilot light or an electric oven. You can just turn the electric light on and cover it with plastic wrap to keep the moisture in. And once your bread has risen to double or a little more, just put it back in the oven and turn the oven to 350 degrees and let it bake. It's all right to let it bake as the bread is, or let the oven heat as the bread is baking. I'm going to show you a real quick vegetable soup that you can make using another whole grain, and that is barley. This is made by sautéing 2 tablespoons of olive oil. You'll notice I'm using a lot of olive oil because it has nice flavor, and it's also an oil that has been shown to help cut down on the cholesterol level in the bloodstream. This is 1 large onion that's been diced with a cup of celery and 1/2 cup of carrots. And these vegetables get sautéed together till they're slightly browned. I partially brown these vegetables, partly to get the flavors out, and also because they're a little bit harder vegetable than the rest of them that I'm going to add. Now, after they're nicely browned, just pour in about 11½, or you can do 12 cups of water, and the rest of the vegetables. And as you can see, this consists of a lot of summer vegetables, but you can use winter vegetables as well. I've got 2 cups of beans, 2 cups of diced zucchini, 2 cups of tomatoes, 1½ cups of chopped cauliflower, and a cup of lima beans. This has a lot of different kinds of vegetables in it, so it's really delicious. And this goes in with 1/2 cup of tomato sauce and 1/2 cup of barley, and 3 tablespoons of miso, 1 teaspoon turmeric, 2 teaspoons of dry parsley leaves, 1 teaspoon of poultry seasoning, 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper, and 1/8 teaspoon of ground cumin. Those just get stirred in and brought to a boil, and then turned down and allowed to simmer for about 30 minutes with this other flavoring. This is 2 tablespoons of nutritional yeast that's been blended with 2 dry shiitake mushrooms until the mushrooms turn to a powder. The dry shiitake mushrooms can be found in most Japanese or Chinese groceries or in the oriental food aisles of grocery stores. Just grind them up dry like that. And then after this has boiled, add 1/2 cup of white wine and simmer it for 15 more minutes for a hearty vegetable soup. Let me show you another hearty dish that you can make. This time I'm going to use bulgur to make a summer bulgur chili. The nice thing about bulgur is you don't really have to cook it. You just bring 2 parts of water for every 1 part of bulgur to a boil. Pour the bulgur in, cover it, and let it sit for about 15 minutes. So in the meantime, while the bulgur is sitting and cooking just in the water, I'm going to start the rest of the ingredients for a bulgur chili. I'm starting off with 2 tablespoons of olive oil. And into this, I'm going to saute the oniony flavored vegetables. Here's a teaspoon of asafoetida and 1 red onion, a white onion, and about half a cup of finely chopped celery. Try to chop all of these vegetables finely so you don't get any real large chunks in any bites. Now, I rarely use onion in my cooking, but chili hardly seems like chili without it. Just saute this until the onions turn a tiny bit translucent. And then add in about half a cup of carrots and 4 teaspoons chili powder, 2 teaspoons ground cumin, half a teaspoon black pepper, and 1/4 to half a teaspoon of cayenne pepper. The amount of cayenne pepper that you add will determine how hot the dish is. So if you want a milder flavored chili, just add 1/4 teaspoon or less. And if you want a hotter chili, a half a teaspoon. Of course, that is to taste. You can always add more if you like. And after you can kind of smell the spices toasting, it's time to add a lot of summer vegetables. I've got 2 cups of red bell peppers, 2 cups of green bell peppers, 2 cups of yellow summer squash, and 2 cups of zucchini, along with 1 cup of tomato and half a pound of fresh mushrooms. Now, this is not your standard chili, with the majority of it being some sort of ground meat, which is full of saturated fat and cholesterol, and a little bit of beans. Instead, I'm using a lot of fresh summer vegetables, but I'm not leaving out the beans. They're coming in a minute. First of all, I need to add 2 cups of tomato sauce, 1 cup of either alcohol-free beer or regular beer, and this adds a nice flavor to the food. Whoops. And a tablespoon of miso and honey. And now, 2 cups of beans. And, whoops, my cooked bulgur. The cooked kidney or pinto beans and the bulgur just get mixed in to the rest of the ingredients. And this makes a nice, attractive chili that's also nice and light for summertime. You see, whole grains make delicious dishes as well as nutritious ones. What are you doing then, Hava?
Well, I finished the bread and I got bored.
Oh, you did?
So I just started making some cookies.
Some cookies. It looks like the Hawaiian crunchies, too. Is that what they are?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Okay, well, can I help?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll pour and you stir. This is a half a cup of safflower oil, and it's sweetened with half a cup of frozen pineapple concentrate, right? Along with half a cup of honey. This is, you don't have to use this kind of honey, but this looks like the Hawaiian lehua honey. Yeah. You know, you can also vary this recipe a little bit, I should mention, before we get to the dried fruit, by adding other kinds of dried fruits and nuts to the recipe. It just won't be Hawaiian crunchies then. Okay, and here's a cup of whole wheat flour and half a cup of macaroon coconut, 1/4 cup of rolled oats, along with a 1/4 cup of dried pineapple that he's chopped up really nicely here. chopped it pretty fine. And of course, I always get the dried pineapple that's been dried naturally without any sugar added to it. There are some dried pineapples in the marketplace that are cooked or boiled in sugar water before they're dried, and they have a real bright yellow color to them. Okay, and then I need 2 tablespoons each of dried papaya and really finely chopped almonds. You did a good job cutting the almonds, you know that? And 2 tablespoons of milk powder. We use the non-instant, non-fat kind. And 2 teaspoons of lecithin granules. This is kind of an emulsifier. It can be found in natural food stores. And then 2/3 of a teaspoon of baking soda and 1/4 teaspoon of really finely grated orange rind. Now the different kind of whole grain, he is using whole wheat flour as the primary grain in this cookie, but the grain that's a little different that you may have some trouble finding but is worth looking for is amaranth. This is what the amaranth seed looks like, and this is probably what you'll end up having to buy if you want to use amaranth, because I haven't really found any amaranth flowers at all in any natural food store. Amaranth is the seed of the amaranth plant, and it's a grain the Aztecs used to use hundreds and hundreds of years ago. It was actually outlawed by the Spanish once they came. And to make flour, I just put the seeds into a blender, and usually I just turn the blender on and walk away and let it blend until it turns into a nice fine flour like this. It takes a few minutes to do that, so I usually just go find something else to do. Okay. Looks like we're ready to go ahead and set that on an oil cookie tray, huh? Let's see, here's a scoop for you, and here's my scoop here. We usually make these cookies about 2 tablespoons large. This is 1/8 of a cup scoop. And put them onto the cookie sheet and pat them down to about 1/4 inch thick. And leave room for them to spread out on the cookie sheet because they will spread a bit. Anything sweetened with primarily with honey or fruit juice concentrate usually spreads out quite a bit. These make really delicious cookies that the children really love. And they're cookies that are so good, the ingredients are so nutritious that I never feel bad that they're snacking on cookies. I'm actually quite proud that he can put them together. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and stick these in the oven. These cookies bake at 350 degrees for 10 to 15 minutes. After they're done baking, you need to turn the oven off and just leave the tray sitting in there with the oven door cracked open for another 10 to 15 minutes. So I'll have to turn this oven back to 350 degrees. And then it's absolutely crucial with these cookies to get them off of the cookie tray while they're still warm. Because if you let them cool on the cookie tray, they'll get crisp and harden onto the tray, and they'll just break when you try to get them off. And when they do finally cool, though, they'll be very, very hard and crispy. You want one, Madhava?
Sure, thanks.
Right? So here you are with a number of different dishes you can make with a number of different grains like amaranth, bulgur, rye flour, barley, and millet. It's nice to remain open-minded enough to be able to walk into a natural food store and try something new out. As a matter of fact, the way I learned about foods was to try something new every time I went into a natural food store, take it home, and experiment. It's also nice to remain open-minded enough for a little food for thought. Looking upon the earth as an object of production that exists only to be used for economic gain is resulting in pollution, scarcity of the earth's non-renewable resources, and other as of yet unknown repercussions. About this exploitation, E.F. Schumacher wrote, "The earth's non-renewable resources are factors of production, that is to say, means to ends, but that is their secondary, not their primary nature. Before everything else, they are ends in themselves, and it is therefore rationally justifiable to say that they are in a certain sense sacred. Man has not made them, and it is irrational for him to treat things he has not made and cannot make and cannot recreate once he has spoilt them in the same manner and spirit as he is entitled to treat things of his own making." In Hawaii, this attitude is called aloha aina and means we should be caretaking the land for the real creator and ultimate owner of everything and everyone.
To get your copy of Kathy's new 750-page cookbook, The Art of Dieting Without Dieting, send a check or money order for $21.95 plus $2 for postage and handling to Kathy's Kitchen, P.O. Box 1122, Glendale, California, 91209. If you prefer to use your MasterCard or Visa, call toll-free 1-800-331-6161.
Tonight on Wild America, they can fly, but they'd rather run. They're big and running wild. Marty Stauffer's Talkin' Turkey on Wild America, tonight at 7:30. Here's Sunday night at 8.